Okay, so good morning. Today's daf is daf Nun Tet 59 in Maseches Zevachim. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. We are in the middle of discussing the location um, of the Mizbeach based in the outer Mizbeach based on a number of Mishnayos. In particular, we're looking at a Mishnah in Maseches Tamid from daf Kaf Tet Amud Aleph that where we wanted to try and use it to say that Rabbi Yossi, the same Rabbi Yossi who's the first Tana in our Mishnah, says that the Mizbeach is all in the north. In the end, we ended the day yesterday offering a second interpretation that indicated that not necessarily, it doesn't have to be that that's Rabbi Yossi. It could be that that's somebody else. But let me share my screen, and again, we can really get started. So we're going to have a lot of Rabbi Yossis. There are three different Rabbi Yossis that we're going to have today. We're going to have one who's Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, a second one who's Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, and the third is Rabbi Yossi HaGalili. So we're going to have three different Rabbi Yossis all today. Very confusing, so we'll have to try and keep them keep them in categorized exactly. And so let's go over where we are.
Rabbi Berman?
No Rabbi Bermans today. So yesterday we began the 6th chapter of Zevachim. The opening Mishnah addressed slaughtering a sacrifice on the top of the altar. Rabbi Yossi said it's valid. Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, said, well, it works on the north half of the altar if we're talking about a Kodesh HaKodashim. And the Gemara explained that this debate was not about the location of the altar, but rather how to understand a verse, namely Sefer Shmot, Perek Kaf, Pasuk Kaf Aleph. And so that is how, and because that pasuk references offering an ola and a shlamim on top of the mizbeach, and so as a result, Rabbi Yossi says it means that they're both okay anywhere on top of the mizbeach. Doesn't make a difference where the mizbeach is located. As long as it's on top, it's fine. And Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, said no. The fact that it says the ola and the shlamim, it means half is good for the ola and half is good for the shlamim. Now, of course, the half that's good for the ola is also good for the shlamim, so it's therefore the whole thing is good for the shlamim. But the idea being that it's not that the whole top surface of the altar is not actually valid for slaughtering for Kodesh HaKodashim. And so as a result, that's the debate. And the debate is not about the location. Now, nonetheless, Rav Asi makes two statements in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, which either directly or implicitly told us that these Tanaim debate the location of the altar. According to Rabbi Yossi, the altar is completely in the north. And according to Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, the altar is completely in the south. Now, we also referenced a third opinion. We had Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says the altar is centered with half in the north, half in the south. So we're continuing to have this three-way debate. Is it all in the north, all in the south, or half and half? And in this regard, we cited a Mishnah in Maseches Tamid that said that the second pyre on the altar, from which coals were taken every day to burn incense on the inner altar, was 4 amot from the southwestern corner. And yesterday we gave two explanations of what this meant, since we know that the pyre must be opposite the opening of either the ulam, which is a 20 amma opening into a sort of antechamber before you get to the Kodesh, where the golden altar is located, where the inner altar is located. Those are the same thing. Or it has to be opposite the Heichal, the opening to the Heichal, which had a 10 amma opening in the center of that 20 amma opening for the Ulam. And so that one can go, the idea being that it's got to be, this pyre location has to be such that you can go due west, right? Again, from east to west, we have the steps to go up to the courtyard. We have the courtyard. We have the mizbeach. We have we're going to have somewhere today, we're going to talk about the kior, the location where hands and feet were washed by the Kohanim, and that's going to be somewhere between the north-south, I guess, longitudinal line where the Mizbeach is located, and between that and where the Ulam is located, we're going to have a Kior, and then you get to the Ulam, then you get to the Kodesh, and within the Kodesh, you get to the Mizbeach HaZahav, and then the menorah and the shulchan are further in from that. So,
I'm often puzzled by these discussions because this is a discussion of fact. There are a lot of discussions about halacha. You eat this, meat that, whatever, basa v'challah, whatever it might be. This is fact. Unfortunately, they didn't have iPhones that could take, or cameras to take pictures. But
correct.
you'd think that someone would have recorded this. This is the way it is. They're arguing about where it was. It's a fact. It is where it was.
I know, 100%. You're absolutely right. But there is underlying the facts of what was is a relevant discussion of what will be and why it was the way it was. And we are going to see that everybody has an explanation as to why it's located in the particular location. And so again, we cited a Mishnah in Maseches Tamid that had that that the pyre was on close to the southwest corner. And so we used that and we said, two possibilities. Either the altar is completely in the north, and as a result, the pyre is 4 amot from the southwest corner because 1 amma is for the base, 1 amma is for the ledge, 1 amma is for the horn, and 1 amma is for Kohanim to walk. So as a result, the pyre couldn't be any further south. And yet, in that 5th and final amma, it's going to be directly opposite the opening of the Heichal. And the other possibility is, no, the altar's in the middle. And when we say it's 4 amot from the corner, it's 4 amot from the corner where the horn is located, meaning we exclude the base and the ledge. And if we exclude the base and the ledge, that means that it's really 6 amot from the southwestmost corner, and 6 amot gets us to the opening of the ulam. And so as a result, if the altar's in the middle, and therefore, again, that could be the possibility. Now, we're going to offer, as we pick up...
The third one, though, right? That it was always is completely in the south.
Yes, but we are not going to attempt to explain the all-south viewpoint based on that Mishnah. The explanation of the all-south viewpoint we will get to shortly, but it is not going to be consistent solely with the idea of being able to walk due west. We're going to see that there's another pasuk that is going to tell us it's got to be all in the south, and then as a result, yes, it's going to be we need to keep, and so as a result, we are not going to explain the Mishnah in Tamid according to that viewpoint, and have it be consistent with the pyre being as close as possible to the ulam and the heichal. We're not going to explain that, but rather, what we're going to do now is we're going to say, you know what? It could be that the Mishnah in Masechet Tamid is telling us that the altar is completely in the north, but it is not Rabbi Yossi, namely Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, but rather it's Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. So let's take a look and we'll see how we get there. So again, beginning of the second to last line on Chet Amabet, V'Rav Sharavya Amar, Rav Sharavya says, Hamani Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. This is going to actually be Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. And now Rashi explains to us what I just said. Rav Sharavya Amar.
Oh, we got Rashi today.
Yeah, we're going to have Rashi, 100%. Arba Amos, Dikatani Bahadi Ama Yesod, Va'ama Sovev. That when we say that there's going to be that the pyre, the second pyre, is going to be 4 amos north of the southwest corner, it includes the amma of the yesod, and it includes the amma of the sovev, of the ledge. Why? Kamar. V'dokmina k'dekamran. And you are right to conclude that the the mizbeach, but safon kai, that in fact the mizbeach has to be, in order for this pyre to be opposite the opening of the heichal, it needs to be that the mizbeach is fully in the northern half of the courtyard. Umihu, nonetheless, l'Rebbe Yochanan lo tisayeh yamina. It's not necessarily a proof from this. The name of Rebbe Yossi ben Chalafta, he mishum deshaminan le the iri benitalin venitnin da hulikuli alma itlahu. That even though we now just said that it's in the north, it is not necessarily a proof that that Rabbi Yossi himself, Rabbi Yossi ben Chalata, believes that the Mizbeach needs to be in the north. Because everybody agrees to the principle that you have to have the pyre as close as possible to the opening. And V'ha de Tamid, Rabbi Yossi Haglili. And when we say that Mishnah over there, it's really Rabbi Yossi Haglili who says, Mukminan, who says that you're going to have it in the fourth Amma from the southwestern corner. Deshaminan le de Amr Mizbeach but Savon Kai, because he himself also says that the Mizbeach has to be in the north. Aval Rabbi Yossi Stama, Dehu Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, but according to Rabbi Yossi, the plain Rabbi Yossi, who is always going to be Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, Delo Shamaslei. We don't necessarily know. We don't necessarily have heard who it is how he says. D'amar lo tukma, that we don't have to say that it's like him. The Dilmuk Rebbe Yehuda spherolei. Maybe he actually holds like Rebbe Yehuda that in fact it needs to be in the middle. So as a result, the Mishnah in Tamid doesn't have to be Rebbe Yossi, and therefore it doesn't have to be that he holds that the pyre is 4 amos from the southwestern corner, and therefore that the Mizbeach must be in the north. And how do I know that Rabbi Yossi Haglili holds that it's that in fact the Mizbeach is all in the north? Did Tanya, again, second to last line, fourth to last word on the line on Nunchev and Bet. We go back into the Gemara. Did Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Haglili Omer, Mitoch Shene'amar V'nasata Esa Kior Ben Oel Moed V'Gomer, that the Pasuk says, and this is a Pasuk in Shmot, Perak Mem, Pasuk Zayin, that it says that the kior is going to be between the tent of meeting, and the pasuk continues, Bein Oel Moed Ubein Hamizbeach, that you're going to put between the tent of meeting and the mizbeach, v'nasata sham mayim, and you put into the kior water. So there's going to be a basin of water that goes between the tent of meeting and the mizbeach. Now, based on this, one would expect that it goes physically between. That if here is the altar and here is the kodesh, the Oel Moed, then it's got to be somewhere in this vertical space, in this space right here, between the two. Okay, but in fact, we also have a pasuk, as we turn to Nun Teramud Aleph, as Mizbach Ha'olah. This is a pasuk. Again, also Shmot Mem, but it's pasuk Kaftet, and it says ve'ez Mizbach Ha'olah Sam Pesach Mishkan Oel Moed. That when it comes to the altar, you're going to put it opposite the opening of the Oel Moed. And what's the implication of that? Mizbach b'Pesach Oel Moed v'lo kior b'Pesach Oel Moed. The implication is that the kior, that the mizbeach is going to be opposite the opening of the tent of meeting, but not the kior. So Heichan Haya knows no. So according to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, where was it placed? Ben ha'ulam v'lemizbeach, in the vertical space between the ulam and the mizbeach. But key to this, mashach kima klape hadaron, but south of the altar. So that's what Rabbi Yossi Haglili says. So again, what we're going to try to find is a way that Rabbi Yossi Haglili could say that in fact that the kior is south of the mizbeach. It's got to be south of the southern tip of the mizbeach, and between the vertical line where the Mizbeach is and the vertical line where the Ulam is located. And so what we're going to see is what the Gemara is going to now do is go through the three different possible locations of where the Mizbeach could be, all in the south, half in the south, half in the north, or all in the north, and show that only if it's all in the north would the Kior have to be south of the Mizbeach. Would it have to be south of the Mizbeach? So that is what we're going to see now. So let's go through it. So my kasavar, what does Rabbi Yossi Aglili hold with respect to the location of the Mizbeach, of the altar? So I kasavar kule Mizbeach but darom kai, if he were to hold that it was all in the south. So again, that's 32 amos of vertical height. That is all in the south. So that is below the east-west line. That is the middle of the courtyard, and that means that there is the opening of the Heichal, which is 10 amos. Half of that opening is opposite the first 5 amos of the Mizbeach, and the Ulam, which has an opening of 20 amos, half of it, or the first 10 amos, are opposite the northern 10 amos of the altar. But that still is going to leave plenty of space below. So let's take a look. So my kasavar, kule mizbeach but darom kai. If you say that the entire mizbeach is in the south, nukma mikotel heichal v'darom. You don't need to have the kior south of the southern edge of the mizbeach, because you could put the kior south of the door to the sanctuary, and that still leaves, because 5 amot are for the door to the sanctuary, door to the heichal, and so you have 27 amot where you could put the kior. So that doesn't work. Bein ulam mizbeach, and it would be between the ulam and the mizbeach, and not opposite the door. So you would satisfy all of the requirements. So as a result, it can't be that that's what we're talking about, because in that case, the kior would actually be between the ulam and the altar, and that's not what Rabbi Yossi Aglili suggested. He said that although it's going to be between the vertical line of the ulam and the altar, it's going to be south of the edge of the altar. So v'inami kasavar kedushas heichal v'ulam chadahi. And even if you were to say that the ulam is the opening that we should focus on, not the heichal, well, the ulam, if the mizbeach is in the southern half, only 10 amos of that ulam opening are opposite the mizbeach, so that still leaves 22 amot where you can put the kior. So nukme mikotel ulam l'darom, put it south of that southern doorpost of the ulam, and then you're going to be fine. And beven ulam l'mizbeach, and it will be between the ulam and the mizbeach, and so it doesn't have to be mashoch kima klape adarom. So how can you say that? So clearly, Rabbi Yossi Aglili could not say that the mizbeach is fully in the south. So inami kasavar ketzio b'tzafim v'ketzio b'darom. Okay, so let's move the mizbeach up a little bit, and we'll say that it's half in the north, half in the south. Nukme mikozol heichav l'darom. But then still, even if it's half in the north, half in the south, so okay, so the midline of the mizbeach leaves 16 amot south of the midline. So 16 amot. Well, the first 5 of those amot are opposite the heichal, or opposite half of the opening of the southern half of the opening of the heichal. But that still leaves 11 amot where you can put the kior. Nukme mikotel heichal v'ladarom. You could put the kior anywhere from that southern doorway, the southern doorpost, to the bottom of the altar. That's an 11 amos space. It still works. Bein ulam mizbeach, and it'll be between the ulam and the mizbeach, and you don't need to draw it south of the mizbeach. And even if you say that what you care about is the opening of the ulam, because the ulam and the heichal have one level of kedusha, well, nukme mikoto ulam v'ladarom. The ulam's doorway is 20 amos wide, so only 10 amos are opposite the southern half of the altar, and that's so, and 16, which is the full bottom half of the altar, which is in the southern half of the courtyard. That 16 amos is still bigger than the 10 amos of the doorway. So that still leaves 6 amos where one could put the kior, a 6 amos stretch. So therefore, it doesn't work to say that the mizbeach is in the middle. So nukme mikoto ulam v'ladarim. You put the kior south of the southern doorpost of the ulam, and bein ulam l'mizbeach, and then it is literally physically between the ulam and the mizbeach, and you don't have that mashach kima klape adarim. You don't have to draw it further south, which is what Rabbi Yossi Aglili had said. So as a result, it can't be that Rabbi Yossi Aglili believes that the mizbeach is in the middle. So it must be that Rabbi Yossi Aglili believes that the entire mizbeach is in the north. The nokme ben mizbeach lahechal batzafon. Oh, but second, why not just do everything in reverse and say, let's put the kior in the northern part of the courtyard, and we'll put it in the northern part of the courtyard between the ulam and the mizbeach, and everything will be wonderful. So why doesn't that work? So kasavar kedushas hecha v'ulam chada. No, that doesn't work. Meaning you can't just put it opposite the ulam's opening and not opposite the Heichal's opening, because he says that even the ulam is going to be also one sanctity, and so as a result, it can't be opposite either the opening of the ulam or either the opening of the Heichal or even the opening of the ulam. So the kinami. Mukmas lay mikot al heichal v'latzafon. So in second havalei ben ulam lemizbeach, and so v'nukma mikot al ulam v'latzafon beven ulam v'lemizbeach. So in second, so all right, so go ahead and move it north of the northern doorpost of the ulam. And given the fact that the ulam only goes, the opening of the ulam goes only 10 amos into the north, and the mizbeach goes 32 amos into the north, you'll still have 22 amos of space where you can put the kior between the mizbeach and the ulam, and it doesn't have to be below the southern edge of the mizbeach, as Rabbi Yossi Aglili said. So how can we have this be anywhere? So note, the explanation is as follows. Amar kra tzafona. No, the pasuk says north. And if we take a look at Rashi, the Rashis are a little bit out of order, but we'll do them in the right order. So take a look, third line of the narrow lines in Rashi on Neten Amud Aleph, tzafona. Midahabale lemichtav. The pasuk could have said al yerech hamizbeach tzafon. That it could have said next to the mizbeach in the north. Viksiv tzafona, but it says northern, in the northern direction. Lidrasha asa, it comes to teach us something. And what does it come to teach us? Let's take a look. So the Gemara continues, Shiahei tzafon panoi mikelim, that the north should be empty of kelim. And Rashi explains prior Rashi, so now we're 4 lines up in the narrow lines of Rashi. Shiei panui mikelim, garas hacha, that's how you should have the girsa. The kior klihu, and the kior would be a vessel. And so as a result, the idea is that nothing can be, nothing other than the altar, at least according to this view, nothing other than the altar can be in the north. And so as a result, the kior has to be in the south. And so if the mizbeach is all in the north, and the kior has to be in the south, well, now we can understand. The kior has to be south of the opening of the heichal and potentially the ulam, and so as a result, it's got to be drawn south and south of the entire altar, because the altar is all in the north. And so everything works according to this explanation. And so as a result, Rabbi Yossi Aglili clearly understands that our that our Mizbeach is all in the north. And so as a result, when we said in our Mishnah in Maseches Tamid that the second pyre is 4 amos from the southwestern corner, it can be consistent with this Rabbi Yossi Aglili. It doesn't have to be Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. It could be Rabbi Yossi Aglili, and therefore we don't have any problem. There's no proof from the Mishnah in Maseches Tamid. There's no proof that in fact Rabbi Yossi of our Mishnah, Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, would say that the Mizbeach has to be in the north. Now, it is true that Rabbi Yochanan says that that's what he says. It's just not a proof from that Mishnah. So, Mantana de Polig Ale de Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Who is it that argues Rabbi Yossi Aglili? It's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. It's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. He, de Tanya, because what does Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov say? And what's the explanation of how this, why the Mizbeach should be fully in the south? This is answering Ken's question from before. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer Tzafona. When it says the north, it says in the north, Sheyeh Tzafon Panoi Miklum. The north has got to be empty from everything. Afilu min hamizbeach, even from the altar. And as a result, if you can't have the Mizbeach in the north, by definition, the Mizbeach is in the south. So that is the end of the conversation, and we now have 4 opinions and 3 views of the location of the outer altar. All is in the north. That's Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yossi Aglili. Rabbi Yossi according to Rabbi Yochanan. In the middle, that's Rabbi Yehuda. And in the south, that's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and I was going to write somebody else, but I think that I don't think there is anybody else, so there's just an extra and there. Okay, so those are the it's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and it should say, and from our Mishnah, it was Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda. So it should say Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda as well. So we actually have 5 different opinions, 5 different views, 5 different opinions, but there are 3 different possibilities, all in the north, in the middle, or all in the south. We have 2 that say all in the north, 1 that says in the middle, and 2 that say all in the south. Okay, so yesterday we discussed a verse that says that you could slaughter the animals on the Mizbeach. So we are now going to use that verse to teach a different lesson. So Amar Rav says, Mizbeach shenifgam kol, and just to catch people up on where we're up to. So we're basically smack in the middle of the daf, right opposite the Hagos Habach on the right-hand side. There's a little letter bet, which is going to the Ein Mishpat right after we say Amar Rav. So Amar Rav, Mizbeach shenifgam kol hakodshim shenishchatu sham psulin. If the altar becomes damaged, all of the sacrifices that have been slaughtered already and are now ready to have their blood put on the Mizbeach, the Mizbeach is damaged, they all become puzzle. Okay? Mikrahu biadenu v'shachachunu ushchachnuhu, and we have forgotten what it was that pasuk, what pasuk that was, and now we're going to have a story that reminds us what the pasuk was. Kisalik Rav Kahana, when Rav Kahana went up from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkechel Rabbi Shimon b'Rabbi, he came across Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rebbe, the Ka'amar Mishum Rabbi Yishmael b'Rabbi Yossi, who was saying in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yossi, Minayim lemizbech shenifgam shekol hakodshim shenishchatu sham psulin. How do we know that if the altar becomes damaged, all of the offerings that were slaughtered there are going to be disqualified? Shenemar v'zavakta alav es olosecha v'esh lamecha, that you slaughter on the altar all of your ola and your shlamim offerings. V'chi alav atazoveach, do you actually slaughter it on the altar? Of course not. Ella kishahu shalem v'lo kishahu chaser, meaning that the altar's got to be there when you do the slaughtering, and if it's not there, then it's going to become pasul. Amar Hainu Kra the Ishtamet Leil Rav. Oh, that's the verse that Rav couldn't remember. So that was the source. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan goes a step further. It's not only the sacrifices that are slaughtered at the time that the altar becomes deficient, but rather echad zeh ve'echad zeh psulin. What does that mean? Echad zeh ve'echad zeh. Rashi tells us third of the medium wide lines. Bein shenishchatu b'shas pegimasan. Whether they've been slaughtered at the time that it becomes the problem exists with the altar. Bein shenishchatu achar tikuno psulin, or if they are slaughtered after it, even after it gets fixed, they're going to be puzzle. Kol hakachim, all of the holy animals that are sanctified. Shahayu kiddushan be'ota shah, because those that were sanctified at that time, lefi sheniru, because they saw the mizbeach, v'nidchu, and then they became disqualified. The kasavar balechayim nidchen kishchutin, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, he holds that even a live animal, before it's slaughtered, if it becomes disqualified, it can become permanently disqualified, just like a slaughtered animal. So now we're going to prove that. But my pligi, what are they?
Why the mizbeach was fixed though, right?
The mizbeach, even though the mizbeach was fixed afterwards, because they were sanctified during the time that the mizbeach was not fixed, and therefore they could not have been offered at that time. Therefore, they're permanently disqualified. Rav Samar balechayim eina nidchin. Rav says that no, if it's alive, it can't be permanently disqualified, permanently rejected. But Rabbi Yochanan Savar balechayim nidchin, and Rabbi Yochanan says no, it can be permanently rejected. So Meisvei, 1 second, I'll ask you a question. Kol hakachim, this is a question to Rav. Kol hakachim shahayu ad shelo nivna hamizbeach. Everything that was not sanctified, that was sanctified before the altar was built, meaning before the mizbeach in the Beit Hamikdash was built. V'achar kach nivna hamizbeach, and then afterwards the mizbeach was now built. So now they could be brought, but they were sanctified beforehand. Psulin, it's puzzle. So in second, nivna. Can you say that it's actually this brisa is referring to when the altar was originally built? Well, then those animals would have been rejected from the very beginning. And that would raise a different issue, because the key concept that the Rabbi Yochanan and Rav are disagreeing about is when it was kosher at one point, then it becomes disqualified while it's alive, and now it becomes qualified again. According to Rav, it's totally fine as long as it was alive. According to Rabbi Yochanan, no, because it was originally qualified and became disqualified, it remains disqualified. So that's the debate. But the debate is not about the following situation, which is a separate debate. And this case is never brought as proof in that case. And that's a separate debate, is what happens if something is disqualified from the very beginning. If it's disqualified from the very beginning, can it be qualified later? And that is not debated. And so as a result, we can't be talking about a situation of dechuyin mi'ikara. So Ella ad shelo neheras hamizbech. So we must adjust the wording of this brisa and say that we're talking about when the altar was about to be destroyed. 1 second, neheras ha-izakun lahu. But if it was about to be destroyed, we know that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed effectively for 70 years. There's no animal that's going to survive 70 years and now be able to be brought as a sacrifice. Ella, so as a result, the bottom line is we have to read this brisa as ad shelo nifgam hamizbeach va'achar kach nifgam hamizbeach psulin. That no, the point is that the animal was sanctified before the altar was damaged, and then after the animal was damaged, it becomes pasul.
Animal or the Beit Hamikdash?
After the altar, and then the altar became damaged, and so now the animal is disqualified, is pasul. And so as a result, that's going to be contradicting Rav, because Rav says if the animal was slaughtered, that's true, but if the animal is alive, and now the altar gets fixed, it's totally fine. So listen, the lo tarutzi kamatar states. So the Gemara answers, well, look, you've already changed the language of this brisa so significantly. Just add in that this is talking about where the animal was already slaughtered, and then it'll be completely consistent with Rav's view. So that challenge falls away. Rav Gidol Amar Rav. 1 second, though. We have another statement in the name of Rav that seems to contradict Rav, because what did he say about the inner altar? Mizbeach shenekar maktirin ketoris bikinkomo. That if the inner altar gets removed, you can offer the ketoris in its place. And that seems to suggest that even if the inner altar was damaged, you can still continue to offer the ketoris. That's inconsistent with the idea that that if the outer altar gets damaged, the sacrifices are pasul. No, keda amar Rava, moda haya Rabbi Yehuda bedamim. So hakanami moda Rav bedamim. No, it's like Rava said in a different case that we will get to in a moment or over the next day or so. But it's like a different case where what did Rabbi Yehuda said? Rabbi qualified and he said that blood is different, namely that you need the mizbeach, you need the outer mizbeach in order to have the sacrifice be valid. Hakanami moda Rav bedamim, and so too Rav would agree that when it comes to the inner altar, even if it's destroyed, you can still offer ketoris in its place. But when it comes to the outer offer, everything that you have, all the sacrifices that you slaughtered, all become invalid. Now, we want to know, where was it that Rabbi Yehuda made this statement? Okay, and so that's the question that we're asking. And we're now going to spend the rest of today all on this, on trying to get to this, to the answer, or get to this language of Moda, of Amar Rava, Moda Haya Rabbi Yehuda Badamim, but we will not get to that until tomorrow, so you'll need to be a little patient. So my Rabbi Yehuda, what was that statement of Rabbi Yehuda? So Titania, so we have a brisa, and again, we are not going to get to the actual answer until tomorrow, so you'll please be patient. Titania, by Yom Hahu Kidesh HaMelech Es Tochachatzer, that the Torah, that the Malachim said, Malachim Aleph Perek Chet Pasuk Samech Dalid says that on that day the king sanctified the interior of the courtyard, suggesting that it was the base of the floor of the courtyard got sanctified. Why? Kimizbach Hanechoshes asher lifnei Hashem katon mehachiel, because the copper altar that was before Hashem was too small to accommodate all the offerings that were made. And we're going to see 142,000 offerings were made in one day when the Beit HaMikdash was being dedicated. Dvarim kishsavan divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda understands that this literally means what is written, that in fact the floor of the courtyard was sanctified so that the Olah sacrifices could be burned on it. Lo Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, on the other hand, disagrees. As we turn to Nun Tedamabet, V'halo kvar nemar elef olot ya'aleh Shlomo al hamizbeach hahu, that we learned elsewhere in Malachim Aleph Perek Gimel Pasuk Dalid that that original altar that Moshe had built, sanctified in the wilderness, and was the altar for the Mishkan before the Beit HaMikdash was constructed, that Shlomo was able to offer 1,000 olos in one day on that altar. Ve'ilu beveis olamim hu omer, and when it comes to the permanent Beit HaMikdash, Vayizbach Shlomo et Zevach HaShlamim Asher Zavach LaHashem Bakar Esrim Ushnayim Elef, and then it continues Vitzon Meya Ve'esrim Elef. So we had 22,000 oxen and 120,000 sheep, and 22,000 plus 120,000 is 142,000. So now, if you do, according to Rabbi Yossi, the calculation of how much space there was on the altar of Moshe. Well, Zeh Gadol Mizeh. It turns out that the altar that was in the Beit HaMikdash is so much larger and had so much space to burn stuff that you could do even more than 142,000. Here's the calculation. In the Mizbeach of the in the wilderness, according to Rebbe Yossi, it was a 5 amma by 5 amma Mizbeach. However, because you had 1 amma for the horns and you had a 1 amma circumference on where the Kohanim needed to be able to walk on the altar, you only had the center amma as a space where the sacrifices could be made. So that's 1 amma, and yet there were 1,000 olos offered on that mizbeach. Now, how big was the altar that in the Beit Hamikdash? We said 32 amos. Well, you take away 2 amos on every side to the for the base and for the ledge. So now you've got a 28 amos squared. You take another amma away for the corners, so that's 26 amos squared. We had another amma for the being able to walk around, so that's 22 amos, and there's another amma that comes in here as well. So you end up with essentially a 20 amos square space. So that's 40,000, 4,000, 20 times 20 is 4,000 square amos. So if you can offer 1,000, 400, 20 by 20 is 400, not 4,000. 20 by 20 is 400. And so if on 1 square amma you can offer 1,000 olot, on 400 square amma you can offer 400,000 olot. And so 142,000 is less than 400,000. So for Rebbe Yossi, there was no problem offering all of the things. And so therefore he does not interpret the pasuk as it's written, but rather the altar had sufficient space, and you did not actually have olot being burned on the surface of the Beit Hamikdash, on the floor of the Beit Hamikdash, of the courtyard. Elamahu katon mehachil. But so rather, what does it mean that the copper altar was too small? It means ka'adam ha'omer l'cha beiro. It's like somebody says about somebody else, Ploni nanasu. This person suffers from dwarfism, and what they're really saying is upasul avoda. They have a mum that disables them from being able to offer sacrifices, and so as a result, that's it was not actually telling us that it was too small, and therefore they needed to have service even on the ground, but rather it's talking about the original altar, and that in fact it just was not going to be sanctified any longer. Rabbi Yehuda, Shaper Ka'amar Rabbi Yossi. Well, second, it seems that Rabbi Yossi had a good argument. So how does Rabbi Yehuda respond? Rabbi Yehuda l'taimei. Rabbi Yehuda follows his own reasoning, because the Amar Mizbeach she'asa Moshe Gadol hayam. Because he says, what was the key element that allowed us to do this math? It was that there was only 1 amma by 1 amma on the Mizbeach of Moshe that was space for burning of olot. And so we burned 1,000 olot in that 1 amma by 1 amma space. But it turns out, no, he says that in fact the altar of Moshe was larger. Titania, chamesh amot orech v'chamesh amot rochav. When it comes to the Torah, it says, and this is Shmot Perakav Zayin Pasuk Aleph, it says that the altar was 5 amos by 5 amos. Dvarim kichsavam. Divrei Rebbe Yossi. Rebbe Yossi, as we already saw, says that it means that the Mizbeach in the Mishkan was 5 amos by 5 amos. But Rabbi Yehuda says no. Nemar kan ravua. Here it says that it was square. The nemar lahalan ravua. And you know what? In connection with Yechezkel, where Yechezkel describes the Mizbeach and its size, it also says that it was square. Malahalan me'emsa iso hayamoded. That over there in Yechezkel, when it says that it was 12 amos long, it means 12 amos from the center to the edge. So really it's 24 amos in every direction. So to here, Avkan, Memsa Iso Hayamodid, from the middle. So as a result, it's not actually 5 amos, it's 5 amos in every direction from the middle, which means that it's 10 amos by 10 amos. And now if you do the math, if you say that it was 10 amos by 10 amos, well now, as a result, the result is that you had plenty of space for the 1,000 sacrifices, and now if you try to expand and you use the 20 by 20 space that was in the Mizbeach in the Beis Hamikdash, it's not large enough to have 142,000 sacrifices, and so as a result, it's going to be a problem. Bahasam Minalan, how do I know that in fact that it was all from the middle? Diksiv v'Ariel shtei misrei. It says that the Ariel was going to be 12 amos by 12 amos, l'chol ruach, in all directions. Oh, einu ela yud bet. So maybe it means literally 12 by 12. No, kishahu omer el arba'at riva'av, that it's 4 corners. Melamed shemeh emsahu modid. No, it's 12 by 12 with a spot in the middle. So you have a 12 by 12 corner in each of the 4 quadrants, and so as a result, it's 24 by 24. Rabbi Yossi, what about Rabbi Yossi? How does he understand this? Ki gamar gzeira shava bigovahu gamir. The gzeira shava, connecting the Mizbeach that's described in Yechezkel to the Mizbeach of Moshe, is not telling us that just as the Mizbeach described in Yechezkel has 4 quadrants of 12 by 12, so to Moshe's is 4 quadrants of 5 by 5. No, it's telling us about something about the height of the Mizbeach. Titania, Shlosh Amos Komaso. The Torah itself says that the outer altar was 3 amot in height. Kidvarim kichsavan. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that that's exactly what it was. It was 3 amos in height. So Rabbi Yossi Omer, no. Nemar kan revua, the nemar lahalan revua. No, in both places it says that it uses the term square. Malahalan govo pishnayim ka'arko. Avkan pishnayim ka'arko. So just as in connection with the inner altar, its height is double its length, so too with respect to the outer altar, its height is double its length. And so, as a result, since the outer altar in the Mishkan was 5 amos, so as a result, the height was 10 amos. So, Amar le Rabbi Yehuda, v'halo kfar nemar orech hachatzer meya v'ama v'koma chamesh amot. 1 second, it says that the length of the court was 100 amos, and the height of the courtyard's curtains were only 5 amos, and now you're putting the Kohen on top of an altar that is 10 amos high. Efshar Kohen omed al gabi hamizbeach v'avodaso biyado v'chol ha'am roin osomim b'chutz. Could it possibly be that everybody around the Mishkan is looking in and seeing that in fact the Mishkan, the Kohen is doing the work that he's doing? Because they could see over the edge of the walls around the Mishkan? That can't possibly be. So Amar lo Rabbi Yossi, no, v'halak kfar namar. It's already been said. Ve'es kalei chatzer, ve'es masach pesach shar chatzer, asher al mishkan ve'al mizbeach saviv. What is it telling us by telling us that the curtains of the courtyard and the screen of the entrance of the gate of the courtyard, which were around the Mishkan and the altar, they're telling you that they had to be at least as high as the Mishkan and the altar. Ma Mishkan Yud Amos, Af Mizbeach Yud Amos. So first of all, it's telling us just as the canopy that was over the Mishkan was 10 amos tall, so too the Mizbeach was 10 amos tall. The Omer Kloim Chamesh Esrei. And you know what? The curtains that were around the entire Mishkan were actually 15 amos, because it says Kloim chamesh esrei ama al hakasik, that they were 15 amos at the shoulder. Now, while Rabbi Yehuda describes that as the length, Rabbi Yossi is saying that's the height. They were 15 amos tall. So that's why you couldn't see, because the curtains all around the Mishkan were actually 15 amos high. Umat Talmud Lomer hey amot. And why does it say 5 amot? Because misfat mizbeach ulamala. It's saying 5 amos up from the edge of from the top surface of the mizbeach. That's what it was. So it was a total of 15 amos. Umal Talmud Lomer shalosh amos komaso. And what does the Torah mean when it says that it was 3 amos tall? Because after all, he says that it means that it was 10 amos tall. Misfat sove vilamala. No, the 3 amos surface was 3 amos above the ledge that the Kohanim could walk on. And so the bottom line is that we right now have a situation where you cannot see the Kohen Gadol doing his work according to Rabbi Yossi. It's a 10 amma surface, but we have not yet gotten to the language that we cared about. Where's this quote of Rava that we referenced and are now trying to show in context? So for that, you're going to have to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf.
Wow. Here.
All right. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Looking forward to continuing our learning together.